The night was heavy with smoke and whispers. The human, Ethan, walked through the narrow alleys of the alien bazaar. He had come here only to find rare tools and spare parts for his small ship, but the deeper he went, the darker the market became. No bright stalls, no honest trade, only shadows and chains. Strange cages lined the walls. Some were metal, some glowing with strange alien energy. Inside them were creatures of many worlds. Some were growling, some crying, some already broken. Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. He should turn back, he told himself, but something kept pulling him forward. A hooded merchant stepped out of the smoke. His voice was rough, his smile sharp. "Looking for a bargain, human?" he hissed. Ethan shook his head quickly. "I'm not here for this," he answered. But the merchant only laughed. "Everyone says that in the beginning." Then the merchant lifted a small lantern. The light fell on a cage pushed in the corner. Inside, a fragile figure sat curled against the cold bars. A girl, alien, but beautiful. Her skin faintly glowing, her hair tangled, but soft, eyes too large for her thin face, eyes that lifted slowly to meet Ethan's gaze. For a moment, the noise of the market faded. Those eyes. They were not wild or savage. They were full of something else. Desperation, sorrow, and a silent plea. "She is cheap," the merchant whispered. "Damaged goods, not worth much." Ethan frowned, anger stirring inside. "She's not a thing," he muttered. The merchant leaned closer, grinning. "Then take her. 10 credits. That's less than a night's drink in your human bars." Ethan's hands trembled. He knew he should walk away. He had no place, no plan, no reason to take her. But when he looked again, the girl pressed her small hands to the bars. Her lips moved, but no sound came. It was enough to break his resistance. "I'll take her," Ethan said firmly. The merchant laughed, handing him a small key. "Foolish human, but your problem now." As Ethan unlocked the cage, the girl did not move at first. She stared at him like she could not believe what was happening. Slowly, step by step, she crawled out, her chains clinking until Ethan pulled them free. The moment the last shackle fell, she swayed forward, and instead of running, she collapsed into his chest. Her body was trembling, cold like ice. Her thin fingers gripped his jacket tightly. Ethan froze, shocked by her sudden closeness. But then he felt her heartbeat, weak, fast, desperate. She whispered a single word in a broken voice, a word heavy with meaning he didn't yet understand. "Master." The human stood there, frozen in the smoky market, the chains lying broken at his feet, the alien girl clinging to him as though her life depended on it. Ethan realized one terrifying truth. He had not just bought her freedom. He had bound himself to something far greater, and in the dark corners of the bazaar, unseen eyes watched him, eyes that did not forgive thieves of property, eyes that promised trouble was coming. The road out of the black market was darker than before. Ethan walked fast, pulling his coat tighter. The alien girl followed him without a sound, her bare feet touching the dust. She moved like a shadow, staying close, never letting the distance grow. He glanced back many times, expecting her to run away, but each time, she was right there, her glowing eyes locked on him, silent, watchful, almost waiting. Ethan tried to speak. "You're free now, you understand? You don't have to follow me." But she only tilted her head, as if his words were strange songs. Her lips opened, but no voice came. Instead, she reached forward and caught the edge of his coat. A small hand, fragile, shaking. She held on like she feared the darkness would swallow her if she let go. The bazaar was fading behind them, but Ethan's heart grew heavy. He had not thought beyond this moment. What would he do with her? Where could she go? He was only a traveler, a nobody drifting from port to port. He couldn't even take care of himself properly. And yet, now there was someone depending on him. The path led to the transport dock. Ships blinked with cold blue lights, engines humming in the night. Ethan reached his small vessel and stopped. "This is it," he whispered. The girl stepped beside him, her eyes reflecting the ship's light. Her expression was unreadable, but her hand still gripped his coat. He sighed, opening the ramp. "Fine. Come in," he muttered. Inside, the ship was small, metal walls plain and lifeless. But when she stepped across the threshold, It was as if she had entered a palace. Her wide eyes moved across every corner. She touched the walls carefully, like they were precious. Ethan realized she might never have seen freedom like this before. He gave her a blanket, setting it on the small cot. "Sleep, you need rest," he said firmly. She stared at the blanket, then at him, confused. Finally, she lowered herself onto the floor instead, curling up like she was still in a cage. Ethan felt his chest tighten. "You don't need to do that anymore," he said softly. He tried to lift her onto the cot, but when he touched her arm, she stiffened, her whole body shaking. Her eyes were wide, full of old fear. Ethan pulled his hand back quickly. Okay, I won't touch you," he whispered. The silence stretched heavy through the ship. Only the hum of the engine filled the air. Ethan leaned against the wall, running a hand through his hair. Why had he done this? Why couldn't he just walk away? But when he looked at her again, she was staring at him, not with fear now, but with trust. That silent trust felt heavier than chains. Hours passed, and Ethan tried to sleep, but something made him open his eyes. There she was, sitting at the edge of his bed, her glowing eyes fixed on the door, watching, waiting, guarding. She was not sleeping at all. Instead, she had placed herself like a shield between him and the outside. Ethan sat up, confused. "What are you doing, Sheldon?" he asked. She turned her head slowly, her lips parting. This time, a faint sound came, broken but clear enough. "Protect," she whispered. Ethan froze, staring at her. This girl who had been chained and broken was now guarding him like he was the one in danger. He did not know whether to laugh or cry, but one thought filled his mind like fire. Who had hurt her so deeply that protecting someone else was the only way she knew how to live? Outside, the night stretched silent, but deep in the shadows of the city, men whispered about the human who stole a slave. They were already tracking him, already waiting for their chance to strike, and Ethan had no idea that the girl's silence was not weakness. It was the calm before a storm that would change everything. The ship drifted quietly through the endless dark. Ethan sat in the small cabin, his head heavy with questions. The alien girl had not spoken again after whispering, "Protect." She sat by the door like a statue, her glowing eyes never closing. Her presence filled the space with both comfort and unease. He tried to distract himself, checking the control panels, fuel low, supplies limited, but it was not the blinking lights that troubled him. It was her, sitting there in silence. Why would she guard him? Why would she stay when freedom was already hers? At last, exhaustion pulled at his body. He stretched out on the narrow bed. "Try to rest," he said softly to her. But the girl only shook her head. Her hair fell across her thin shoulders, her lips pressed tightly together, as if she feared sleep would bring chains back again. Ethan closed his eyes, but his mind refused to settle. Every rustle made him glance at her again, and every time she was awake, watching. The blanket he had given her lay untouched. She had not eaten the food either. It was as if she was waiting for his command, as if she could not act without his permission. Finally, Ethan sat up. He picked up the plate of food and moved closer. Slowly, he placed it in front of her. "Eat," he said gently. The girl blinked, then lifted the bread with trembling fingers. She looked at him first, waiting. Only when he nodded did she finally take a bite. And the way she ate, quick, small bites, like she feared it would be stolen. It broke something inside him. When she finished, she placed the plate down carefully. Then her gaze returned to the door, silent, unmoving. Ethan rubbed his face in frustration. "Why do you do this?" he asked. No answer came, only the sound of the ship's engine. But when he laid back again, he heard the faintest whisper, "Safe." The word cut through the silence like a blade. Ethan opened, his eyes staring at her. Her voice was broken, but her meaning was clear. She felt safe. Only when she was protecting him, that night dragged on, heavy and restless. At some point, Ethan dozed off, dreams twisted into shadows of cages and chains. But when he woke with a start, he saw her again, still by the door, her small frame leaning forward, her eyes burning bright in the darkness. It was as if she had not moved at all. "You can't stay awake forever," he muttered. But she only tilted her head, her hair brushing her cheek. Then she gave a faint smile, small and unsure, as though she was testing what a smile even felt like. Ethan's chest tightened again. Something in that smile was fragile, beautiful, and dangerous, like glass that might shatter with one wrong touch. Hours later, as the ship cut through the black, a faint alarm beeped on the console. Ethan hurried forward. The scanner showed movement behind them. Small ships closing in. His stomach dropped. The black market's hunters were already tracking. He turned, his voice urgent. "We're in trouble," he said. The girl rose to her feet slowly. Her chains were gone, but the way she moved was precise, almost trained. Her eyes glowed brighter now. She stepped beside him, her small frame straight. Her lips moved again, stronger this time. "Stay. I protect," she said. Ethan stared at her. For the first time, he wondered if this fragile girl carried secrets he could not imagine. Secrets that might decide whether they lived or died. The first night was not peaceful. It was the beginning of something darker, and Ethan knew, deep inside, he had not just saved her life. He had tied his own to hers, forever. The hum of the ship echoed in the silence. Ethan sat at the control panel, his hands gripping the wheel, but his mind was not on the scanners or the blinking lights. It was on the girl sitting quietly across from him, her small frame wrapped in the blanket he had given, her glowing eyes watching the stars pass by through the window. For hours she had not spoken, her lips pressed tight as though holding secrets too heavy to release. Ethan wanted to ask, but he feared breaking the fragile calm between them. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice low. "Where did they take you from? Who did this to you?" The girl did not answer at first. Her body stiffened, and her trembling hands gripped the edge of the seat. Her eyes lowered to the floor, and for a moment Ethan regretted asking. But then, slowly, she raised her thin wrist. There, burned into her skin, was a mark, a brand, harsh and cruel, the shape of a chain linked to a broken circle, a symbol of ownership. Ethan's chest tightened with anger. "They marked you like property?" he whispered. The girl's head bowed lower. Her shoulders shook as if the memory itself was still cutting her open. Then faintly, her voice broke the silence. "Slave," she said. The word cracked in the air like glass breaking. Ethan wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong, but the truth was burned into her skin and into her heart. He reached forward, gently covering her wrist with his hand. "You are not a slave," he said firmly. "You're free now. Do you understand? Free." The girl's eyes lifted, shimmering with tears, but there was doubt in them, heavy and deep. She had lived too long in chains to believe in freedom so easily. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Chains." "Inside," she tapped her chest softly. "Never go away." Ethan felt a wave of helplessness. What could he possibly say to heal wounds carved so deep? He had no answer, no magic words. All he could do was sit beside her, his presence silent but steady. Then, unexpectedly, the girl shifted. She leaned closer. Her forehead touched his arm lightly, a gesture of trust, small but powerful. It was as though she was saying, "You cannot erase my chains, but you can help me carry them." The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the ship. Ethan realized this moment had changed everything. She was no longer just a stranger he had freed. She was someone bound to him now, not by chains of iron, but by chains of trust. Before he could speak again, the ship's warning lights flickered. A signal flashed across the screen. Unknown vessels closing in. Ethan's heart jumped. The black market hunters were catching up faster than he expected. He cursed under his breath and prepared the ship for evasive flight. The girl's eyes widened at the alarm, but instead of fear, there was fire in them now. She stood, steadying herself. Her small hand gripped his sleeve. "No, run," she whispered firmly. Her voice was shaky, but her meaning was sharp. "They hunt. Always. Fight. Once." Ethan stared at her. This fragile girl, branded and broken, now wanted to face the hunters who once owned her. For the first time, he saw not only sorrow in her eyes, but defiance, a spark of something that refused to stay chained. He swallowed hard, gripping the controls. "Then we'll fight," he said quietly. The girl leaned closer, whispering a single word. "Together." The chains of her past had scarred her deeply. But in that moment, Ethan realized She was not only fighting for freedom, she was fighting for him too. And somewhere in the dark, the hunters prepared to strike. Unaware that their broken slave was no longer broken, she was ready to rise. The ship floated through endless stars, but peace did not last. Ethan tried to rest, yet sleep refused to come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the brand burned on the alien girl's wrist. Every time she looked at him with those glowing eyes, he felt the weight of a promise he had never spoken. I will protect you. Morning came slowly, the ship drifting on quiet autopilot. Ethan stepped out from his cabin, stretching his sore muscles, but something was wrong. The cot was empty, the blanket folded neatly. The girl was gone. His chest tightened, panic rising fast. Where? He whispered, rushing to the door. The ramp was open, the cold air of the colony world blowing in. He sprinted outside, his boots hitting the dusty ground. Her tracks were light, small footprints leading away into the crowded streets. Ethan pushed through the alien crowd, calling her name. Though he realized too late, he didn't even know her name. Faces turned, strange eyes followed him, but he kept moving, desperate. Then he saw them. Down a narrow alley, the girl was cornered. 3 bounty hunters stood in front of her, their armor scarred, weapons glowing faintly. One of them grabbed her arm, jerking it forward. She belongs to the market, the hunter growled. Property cannot escape. The girl struggled, her voice breaking. No. Free, she whispered. Her thin arms tried to push away, but she was too small against their strength. Ethan's blood boiled. Before he even thought, he rushed forward. Let her go, he shouted. The hunters turned, their reptilian faces sneering. A human? One laughed. You dare steal from us? She is marked. She cannot be yours. Ethan didn't stop. He slammed into the first hunter, knocking him back. The second swung a heavy arm, hitting Ethan across the jaw. Pain exploded, but Ethan stood his ground. He fought with fists, wild but determined. The hunters had, pawns, but Ethan had fury. Every strike he threw was fueled by the sight of her trembling in chains. The girl's eyes widened as she watched. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever stood between her and the chains. Ethan was knocked down hard. The hunters laughed, raising a blade to strike. But then something strange happened. The girl screamed, a sound sharp and filled with energy. Her small body glowed faintly. A surge of light burst from her skin. It was weak, uncontrolled, but enough to blind the hunters for a moment. Ethan leapt up, using the distraction. He tackled the one holding the blade. The weapon clattered to the ground. He grabbed it, pointing it back at them. Touch her again, and I'll end you, he growled. The hunters hesitated, glaring with hate, but they were not ready for a fight in the middle of the colony streets. With snarls, they retreated. You cannot hide forever, human, one spat. The market always collects its property. As they vanished into the shadows, Ethan turned to her. She stood frozen, trembling, her eyes wide, her glow slowly fading. When he reached for her hand, she flinched, then collapsed against his chest. Her voice was broken, but her words were clear. Don't leave me. Ethan held her tight, his heart pounding. You ran because you didn't want me hurt, didn't you? He whispered. She nodded weakly. Her chains of fear had told her. If she stayed, he would be destroyed. So she tried to escape, to save him. But Ethan now understood one thing. Running would never save either of them. Only standing together could. He brushed her tangled hair back gently. You are not alone anymore, he said, and I'm not letting you go. Far away, unseen in the shadows, the hunters watched, their message already sent back to the black market masters, and the true battle had only just begun. The alley was quiet now, but Ethan's chest still burned. Blood dripped from the corner of his lip, his fists raw from the fight. The alien girl clung to him, trembling, her small frame shaking like a leaf caught in the wind. Ethan looked down at her. Her eyes were wide, glowing faintly in the dark, but there was something new inside them. A spark, fragile but alive. She had seen him fight, not for gold, not for reward, but for her. He gently pulled her close, whispering, They won't take you again, not while I'm breathing. Her lips parted, and for the first time she spoke without hesitation, her voice soft but filled with strange warmth. Mine. The word made his heart stumble. It was not master, not slave. It was something else, something dangerous, a bond deeper than chains, but Ethan could not think about it now because danger was not gone. It was only circling closer. They hurried back to the ship. The colony streets watched them in silence. Merchants turned away, afraid to get involved. Whispers followed them. The human. He fights the hunters. He'll be dead by sunrise. Inside the ship, Ethan patched his bruises with shaky hands. The girl sat near him, watching every movement. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to help but didn't know how. Finally, she reached forward, taking the cloth from his hand and pressing it gently to his cut lip. Her touch was clumsy but careful. Her glowing eyes never looked away. Ethan almost laughed, bitter and soft. "You're supposed to be the one I protect, not the other way around." But she only tilted her head, her broken words trembling out. "Together. Fight." The hum of the ship filled the silence. Ethan leaned back, his jaw set. The hunters would return, he knew it. The black market never forgot stolen property, but he wasn't going to run anymore. He activated the comms, searching for any safe zone or port that might help, but every screen flashed the same warning. Reports of bounty hunters, black market control. No one wanted trouble. No one would protect a runaway. Ethan clenched his fists. "If the galaxy won't give her freedom, then I'll carve it myself," he muttered. His words were sharp, filled with defiance. The girl watched him, her expression unreadable. But then, slowly, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his arm. A silent promise, not to leave, not to let him fight alone. Hours later, the scanner beeped again. Ships approaching fast. Ethan's breath caught. The hunters were back, larger numbers this time. They had followed his trail, and now they wanted blood. He strapped himself into the pilot's seat. The girl stood behind him, one hand gripping the chair. He could feel her trembling, but her voice was steady when she whispered, "Ethan, strong." It was the first time she had spoken his name. The sound of it from her lips made his chest tighten. He gave her a quick glance and nodded. "Strong together," he said. The hunters' voices crackled over the comms. "Human, surrender the property. Last warning." Ethan gritted his teeth, fury burning. He slammed his fist on the control. "She is not property. She is free." The girl's eyes widened at his shout. Her lips moved, whispering a single word again. "Mine." This time, it was not a broken plea. It was a declaration. The hunter ships drew closer, weapons glowing. Ethan's ship shook as the first warning blast hit the shields, but he did not flinch. He pulled the controls tight, his voice hard. "Then come and take her, if you can." In that moment, Ethan was no longer just a drifting traveler. He was a defender, a wall between her and the world that tried to chain her. His defiance burned brighter than the stars around them. And the hunters would soon learn, a human protecting what he loved was more dangerous than any chain. The hunters had been pushed back for now, but Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before they returned stronger. Still, the small ship sailed through the quiet stretch of stars. Inside, silence lingered, broken only by the soft hum of the engines. The alien girl sat across from him, her thin hands folded in her lap. Her glowing eyes watched every movement he made. She had spoken his name once, and that sound still echoed in his chest. It was strange how one word could feel heavier than chains. Ethan turned from the controls. "You should rest," he said gently. But she shook her head, her tangled hair brushing her cheeks. "Safe. With you," she whispered. The words were broken, but their meaning was clear. Her safety existed only where he was. He sighed, leaning back against the chair. "I can't protect you all the time," he muttered. Yet her eyes, steady and sure, seemed to answer. "You already are." Later, when the stars stretched endlessly, Ethan tried teaching her small words. He pointed at objects in the ship. "Food," he said, holding up a ration pack. She repeated carefully, "Food." Her voice soft, uncertain. He smiled despite himself. Then he touched his chest. "Ethan." She paused, then touched her own. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Her name, lost in chains, stolen by her captors. Ethan's heart ached. He reached forward, pressing her hand to her chest. "You don't need to remember now. One day, you'll tell me." Her glowing eyes shimmered, and for the first time she smiled. Not faint, not broken, but real. It was small, fragile, but it lit the cabin brighter than the stars. That night, Ethan laid down to rest, But when he opened his eyes again, she was beside him, curled at the edge of his bed, her breathing soft, her fingers clutching the blanket. He froze, unsure. But then he realized, she wasn't invading, she wasn't trying to claim, she was only trying. Is to be near the one place she felt safe. Carefully, he pulled the blanket over her small shoulders, and for the first time in years, she slept deeply. The next day, she surprised him again. He worked on repairing a broken panel, tools scattered around. She crouched beside him, quietly watching. Then with careful hands, she picked up a small tool and handed it to him. Not random, exactly the one he needed. Ethan blinked, surprised. You know this? She nodded faintly. Learn, long ago. Fix, machines. Piece by piece, more fragments of her past slipped through. She had once been taught skills, but chains had reduced her to silence. Now, with Ethan, pieces of her were returning. As the hours passed, he saw her differently, not as a slave freed, not as someone broken, but as someone rebuilding herself in his presence. Every word she spoke, every smile she gave, pulled him deeper into something he could not name. That evening, as the stars dimmed in the viewport, the girl sat beside him, closer than before, her glowing eyes turned upward, her voice trembling but clear. You, mine, I, yours. Ethan's heart pounded. It was not ownership she spoke of, it was belonging. She was not clinging because of chains, she was choosing, slowly, painfully, but freely. Before he could answer, the ship's scanner beeped again. Another warning, more hunters closing in. The moment shattered, replaced with danger. But the bond between them was no longer fragile. It was becoming unbreakable. Ethan gripped the controls. The girl stood beside him, steady now. No longer just a rescued slave, but his partner, his shield, his reason to fight. And together, they prepared for the storm ahead. The bond between them had grown in silence and small moments, but the galaxy did not allow peace for long. Ethan knew it. And deep down, she knew it too. The hunters had not forgotten, and the black market never forgave. The ship drifted toward a lonely planet. Ethan hoped to land, restock fuel, and maybe find answers. But the moment they entered orbit, the scanners screamed. Multiple ships appeared from the shadows, larger, stronger, marked with the black insignia of the slave market. The alien girl stiffened beside him. Her small hand clutched his sleeve tightly, her glowing eyes wide with fear she tried to hide. Ethan cursed under his breath. They found us. The comms crackled to life. A cold voice filled the cabin. Human, return the property you stole. You have one chance. Ethan's jaw tightened, fury burning inside him. She is not property, he shouted, but the voice only laughed. You cannot change what she is. She was bred to serve. Return her or die. The girl's trembling grew worse. She pressed against Ethan's side, her lips forming broken words. Go! Leave me! Safe! If I go! Ethan turned to her sharply, his voice hard. No, I will never hand you back. Not now, not ever. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Her chains of fear told her he was wrong, that no one fought the market and lived, but his defiance gave her a strength she never knew she had. The enemy ships closed in, surrounding them, weapons charged, red lights flashing. Ethan's small vessel stood no chance in firepower, but his will was unshakable. He hit the controls, diving the ship toward the planet's surface. Lasers cut through the sky, chasing them like burning knives. The girl held onto the chair, her voice shaking. Why risk all for me? Ethan gritted his teeth, eyes locked on the horizon. Because you are not a slave. Because you deserve to live. The ship shook violently as a nothing. A blast grazed the wing. Smoke filled the cabin, alarms blaring. But Ethan pushed on, weaving between cliffs of rock as the planet's surface rose. The hunters followed close, snarling over the comms. You cannot run forever, human. She belongs to us. The girl's hands trembled, but her eyes were burning now. For the first time, she shouted back, her voice raw but fierce. No, I belong to no one. Her cry startled Ethan. The power in her voice was new, not broken, not weak, defiance. For the first time, she stood against her captors with her own words. The hunters fired again. Ethan barely dodged, landing rough on the rocky ground. The ship skidded, metal screeching. He slammed the controls and the engines died, smoke rising. The girl stumbled forward, her knees weak, but her spirit unbending. Ethan grabbed a weapon from the emergency kit. He turned to her, his eyes fierce. They're coming, but this time, we fight together. Her glowing eyes met his. She nodded slowly. No more whispers of leaving, no more talk of chains, only a steady fire. She stood beside him, small but unshaken. Her trembling had become resolve. Outside, the enemy ships landed. Heavy doors opened, and armored hunters poured out. Their voices rose, mocking. Human, step aside. Give her up, and we might let you live. Ethan raised his weapon, his stance firm. You'll have to kill me first, he shouted. The girl stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm, her whisper barely audible but sharp as steel. Together. The night sky above the rocky planet burned with enemy fire, and Ethan realized this was not just his fight anymore. It was hers too. The enemy had returned, but this time they would not face a broken slave. They would face a girl who had chosen freedom, and a human who would die before letting her go. The rocky ground shook as the enemy ships landed. Doors slammed open. Armored hunters marched out, their glowing weapons pointed toward the small ship. The night air burned with dust and fire. The black market had come to take back what they believed was theirs. Ethan stood tall at the ramp, his weapon gripped tightly. But it was not the gun that gave him strength. It was the fragile figure standing at his side. The alien girl, once trembling in chains, now held her head high. Her glowing eyes burned with defiance. The leader of the hunters stepped forward, a towering figure with jagged armor and cruel eyes. His voice echoed, sharp and cold. Human, give her to us, and we will spare your life. Ethan's jaw tightened, his voice steady. She is not yours. She is not anyone's. She is free. The hunters laughed, cruel and mocking. Free? That one was bred for obedience. She is nothing without a master. But the girl stepped forward, her voice breaking through the night, her words slow but sharp. No, I am not nothing. I am mine. The hunters froze at her defiance. For the first time she had spoken not as property, but as a person. The leader snarled, "Then you both die." He raised his weapon, and the hunters surged forward. Ethan fired, the crack of his weapon echoing against the rocks. The first blast struck an armored chest, sparks flying. The girl clutched his arm but did not hold him back. Instead, her skin glowed brighter. Light surged from her small body like fire breaking from ice. The hunter staggered, blinded for a moment. Ethan used the chance, pulling her behind cover. "Stay low," he shouted, but she shook her head fiercely. "No. Fight. Together." With trembling hands, she raised her palms. Energy pulsed from her skin. Not a weapon she had learned, but a power locked deep inside her blood. Chains had kept it buried, but now her will tore them apart. Bolts of light shot outward, striking the hunters. They screamed as the blasts cracked their armor. Ethan stared in shock. Her fragile body was burning with power she herself barely understood. But it was not enough. The hunters regrouped stronger. One charged, slamming Ethan to the ground. His weapon skidded across the rocks. The leader raised a blade, ready to end him. The girl cried out, running to him. Her body glowed so bright it lit the night sky. She threw herself over Ethan, shielding him. The blade came down and shattered against her light. The hunters stumbled back, fear spreading across their faces. This was no broken slave. This was something they had never controlled, something they could never chain again. Ethan rose, grabbing his weapon, firing with renewed fury. Beside him, she unleashed her power again. Their voices, their strength, their defiance. Together, it was unstoppable. The hunters began to fall back. The leader roared in rage, but when he looked into her glowing eyes, he saw no fear, only freedom. At last, with one final surge of light, she pushed them back. Their ships trembled as they retreated into the sky. The battlefield fell silent. The hunters were gone. Ethan dropped his weapon, his chest heaving. The girl stumbled, her glow fading. He caught her in his arms before she could fall. Her breathing was heavy, her voice weak, but her words were clear. No more chains. Ethan held her tight, his heart heavy with pride and relief. No more chains, he whispered back. The night air was quiet again, but this silence was not fear, it was victory. For the first time in her life, the girl was truly free, and Ethan realized freedom had been bought not with credits but with fire, blood, and a bond stronger than iron. The battle of freedom was theirs, but the war for their future was only beginning. The battlefield lay quiet under the alien stars. Smoke drifted from the scorched rocks where the hunters had fallen back. The ground was littered with broken weapons and shattered armor, but the Black Market's army was gone, at least for now. Ethan stood in the silence, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion, his arms still around the alien girl. Her glow had faded, her body weak, yet her eyes were alive, shining brighter than the stars above them. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The night was filled only with the faint hum of the damaged ship and the steady rhythm of two heartbeats pressed close together. Finally, the girl whispered, her voice soft but steady. "No more chains. Never again." Her words trembled, but they were not broken anymore. They were a vow. Ethan nodded firmly, his voice low. "Never again, I promise you." He lifted her carefully, carrying her back into the ship. She clung to him, not in fear this time, but in trust. Her thin fingers held onto his shirt as though she knew deep inside he would never let go. Inside, he laid her gently on the cot. She looked around at the small cabin with tired eyes, and for the first time, it did not look like a prison. It looked like home. Ethan sat beside her, his voice rough from the battle. "You're not property. You're not anyone's slave." He paused, his eyes meeting hers. "You're yours, and if you'll let me, I'll stand beside you, always." The girl's lips trembled, her glowing eyes softened, and slowly, carefully, she spoke. "Mine, forever." But this time the word was not a chain, not a cage. It was a choice, her choice. Ethan smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. He realized then that he hadn't just rescued her, she had rescued him too. She had given him a reason to fight, a reason to believe. Hours passed, and the ship lifted into the sky again, the planet falling away beneath them. The girl leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Her voice came soft, almost a breath. "What now?" Ethan stared out at the endless stars. He did not know what worlds would bring. The hunters would not give up. The Black Market would never stop chasing. But none of that mattered now. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Now, we make our own future. No masters, no chains, only freedom." She closed her eyes, a faint smile curling on her lips. For the first time, she could imagine a tomorrow that was hers, a tomorrow where she belonged. Not to the market, not to fear, but to herself, and to him. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a galaxy filled with dangers, shadows, and enemies. But together, they were stronger than either had ever been alone. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls, his voice steady, fierce, unshakable. "They'll come for us again, but when they do, they'll find we're not afraid." The girl's glowing eyes opened slowly. She whispered one last word, a promise that bound them both, together. The ship cut through the darkness, leaving behind the ashes of chains and the echoes of a battlefield, and carrying with it two souls who had chosen each other, not by accident, not by force, but by something greater, a bond forged in fire, sealed in trust, and carried forever among the stars.